Why are we forcing kids to write apologies and say I'm sorry? I've tried the most popular teaching strategies, and I'm here to tell you which ones actually work. Hi, my name is Amanda Rose. I have 14 years of teaching experience in New York City schools. I have a major in history, I minored in secondary education, and I have my master's degree in literacy skills. The first bulk of my career, I taught seniors 12th grade economics and participation in government, and right now I am currently a full middle school teacher teaching 6th grade global social studies and 7th grade US history. We're going to discuss 8 of the most recommended classroom strategies, why they're popular, why they work, why they don't work, and my personal opinion as to whether I would recommend them or not. So if you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel, that you get ready to like this video. And please, if you have any hypes available and you wouldn't mind just hyping up my video, I would really appreciate it so that my channel can grow and other people can see content that they find helpful as well. So let's start with the first strategy. Positive behavioral intervention supports. In other words, rewarding good behavior with positive reinforcements. This strategy is all about rewarding positive behavior. When you see a student doing the right thing in the classroom, oh, thank you so much for already taking out your notebook and pencil. Thank you to Jessica for already answering the do now question. Love it when Amron tucks in his chair. Seeing positive behaviors and then being able to reinforce them out loud. Some teachers also like to use a point system, being able to cash in rewards, tickets for free homework, winning prizes, all of the above. Now, here's what works in a strategy like this. There are some students who are intrinsically motivated to do well. It's a good way to notice and praise the students who are doing well in your classroom who might not always be told that they're doing well. Sometimes as educators, when it comes to classroom management, we're always focusing on the ones who are like doing the wrong thing or wanting to make sure that everybody is in line with whatever the expectations are. But there are many times when we tend to forget the students who are doing the right thing. So in theory, I believe that this strategy works. If I'm being honest, this is probably my least favorite strategy. And here's why. I personally think when a student is rewarded for doing what they're supposed to be doing, I don't know if it's just me, but I kind of have a problem with that. I think that students can be told and should be told when they're doing the right thing. But when it comes to prizes, that's the part that really gets me. Free homework tickets and all of the above, I don't know. That to me, I'm not necessarily a fan. I think students should know these are the expectations in the classroom and you're just supposed to do them, especially middle school and high school. Maybe this system might work on an elementary school level where they're still learning behaviors, but for me, middle school and high school, it's very much black and white. These are the expectations. This is what you're supposed to do. These are the consequences. I also think that students can weigh out the prizes. Maybe they don't want candy. Maybe they don't care about the prize that you're giving them for doing the right thing. And so oftentimes prizes can lose their power as the year goes on. I also have seen classrooms where students are not willing to participate or students are not willing to do the right thing unless they know that there is a reward at the end of their participation or positive behavior. So for me, I do not like this system. Do I think that acknowledging students is a good thing? Yes. Do I think that only acknowledging students doing the right thing for a reward? No. I want to create a classroom environment where students do the right thing simply for doing the right thing, knowing that it is what is expected of them without any reward in return. So in my personal opinion, would I recommend this strategy? No. The second one, everyone's favorite, restorative practices. Oh my goodness, I remember when this strategy first started to become really popular and there was so much teacher resistance. And I was also one of those teachers. What do we mean restorative circles, having conversations? I was super confused about this. And so here are the things that I want to point out. Restorative practices and circles have their place. Key things that I like about this strategy: replacing suspension with dialogues, getting to the root of why students are doing what they're doing. I think that that is very important, including the parent in these conversations, guidance counselors in these conversations. That in and of itself, I think is highly important at any age group, trying to understand why students are doing what they're doing, even if we don't ever really get to the root of the problem. The goal is at least to attempt to try and understand. I also think that reflection conversations are important. Students need opportunities to grow emotionally and mentally and learn to understand why they do what they do. Why do they respond to specific situations in a certain way? So in theory, I think restorative justice practices are helpful. I personally use this more in my classroom as opposed to thinking that it is actually successful on an admin whole school-wide level. When I don't think restorative practices work is when a student has these conversations and they weren't ready for the conversation. A student's not ready to reflect. A student is not ready to apologize. Like, why are we forcing kids to write apologies and say, I'm sorry? Now I know, is that the mature thing to do? Is that the bigger person thing to do? Yes, but if we really want our students to grow from their experiences, that should be something that they naturally are willing and wanting to do. In my experience, what I have seen is that many students are forced to apologize, and they might not even realize or understand the weight of their decision until the following school year. I've had apologies from students the following year for something that they did so long ago. Been there, done that. I forgot about it. I moved on, but it was weighing on them, and they came to me with an actual genuine apology. And so here's my stance. Would I recommend restorative practices? Maybe. I think it depends on the student. I think it depends on the circumstances, and it depends on what you want the outcome of the conversation to be. If you're seeking an apology, I don't think that's the right outcome. I think seeking to understand why the student did what they did, how to avoid a situation like that from happening again, for me, those are the right reasons to have restorative practices, not to force a kid to say an apology. Strategy number 3, flipped classroom. This was such a popular thing at my old school. So, fun story. At my old school, we had new administration that came in during the year of COVID. And they pretty much made everyone, it was a charter school, they made everyone reapply for their jobs, and they made us reapply using the flipped classroom strategy. And they watched our videos, they saw the questions that we embedded, and they wanted to see if we were capable of creating a flipped classroom lesson, because that was the direction that the school was heading in. I don't even know if they're still doing that, but that's how they made us all apply. And I learned a couple of things by going through that process. One, it is extremely time consuming to film all of those videos. They wanted us specifically to film our own instruction and have students answer questions at home. Now, can flipped classroom happen in other ways? Absolutely. Having them watch a YouTube video, creating a reading document, and having them answer those questions at home. If you're unfamiliar with flipped classroom, what it is that students do the bulk of their learning at home as homework, so that when they come in the next day, you can spend most of your class time on the actual activity. This way your time is split, you can work with isolated groups, and you really do get to see the benefit of more class time because you remove a lot of the actual mini lesson and instruction for those 45 minutes or however long your classroom is. And so, as everything, in theory, this system is amazing if you have students who actually do homework. I don't know what it is, you guys. My stance is getting all over the place. I'm hype about this. I don't know what it is, but getting students to do homework is difficult. Getting students to do homework without using AI is difficult. And so for me personally, I found that I would just have students that would come with a bunch of questions answered, and they didn't even really comprehend the material, or they just didn't do the homework at all. I think that if you are in a school where this is the culture of your school, flipped classroom is something that every child or every classroom is participating in, I love this idea. I love having more learning and activity time during the school day than having to split up your time with a mini lesson. And so if this is the culture of your classroom, if this is the setup that your students are familiar with, I would definitely recommend. If you know that your students are not big homework people and that your school in general doesn't promote giving students homework every single night, this strategy is not going to work for you. So would I recommend it? Yes, it depends on your school. Do I use it? No. Oof, this one might be the most popular. Differentiated instruction. If you speak to any admin, they want differentiation. It is kind of like the non-negotiable in your classroom, especially if you are working with students that also have IEPs. You have to differentiate. Personally, I like differentiation. I'm just gonna let the cat out the bag. I do really enjoy this. I love having tiered assignments. I love having different assignments, providing visual aids, reading aids, sentence starters, images, highlighting things and color coding in different colors. Is it exhausting? Yes, but this is actually the strategy that I have found the most helpful. Catering to different learning styles and also flexible grouping, I think that this is what allows your classroom to never feel stale, to never feel boring. It gives you an opportunity to exercise your creativity because you're providing content in different ways. And I do think that it really does hit a variety of learning styles at once. I think when you differentiate your lessons, they for sure become more engaging for your students. Now, let's talk about some reasons why people might find pushback. One, this is not sustainable daily. Absolutely not. Two, I do think when we're doing lessons like this, it does lead faster to teacher burnout because you're always trying to do something different. It can never just be like this full cookie cutter lesson, which I totally understand. I also think that there's usually misunderstandings between admin and teachers as to what differentiation actually looks like and what is realistic versus what is ideal. In an ideal world, so much of teaching is ideally it should be like this. In theory, it should be like this. But when we actually do the day-to-day, we have to have real conversations about what is realistic on a daily basis. However, if we're talking about the strategy itself and how helpful it is for you as an educator and for your students, would I recommend it? Absolutely yes. Next one. Culturally responsive teaching. Boy, I'm sure just by saying that sentence, I have triggered somebody. I had no idea that culturally responsive teaching was so controversial. I guess it's just because living in New York City, I have experienced probably every single culture that exists on the planet. My students are all different. My neighbors are all different. Like, you just see so many people from so many different backgrounds, languages, cultures, food, style. Like, to me, that is my life. I don't know anything different. So to include that in my lessons, to include that in the day-to-day, just seems so normal to me. I've noticed that this is actually quite a sensitive area, not just depending on where you live, but who you are, your background. Some people might feel like they don't even have a culture. So I'm learning that this is actually not as not as acceptable, but that is not as common as it is for me and my school environment. So to me, what does this look like? One, the easiest way is having representation in curriculum. Now, keep in mind, I'm a social studies teacher. So for me, again, it just seems easier maybe to do than in other classrooms. But for me, one of the easiest ways that I include this is by also talking about women within education. Most of our curriculum is very male-centered, and so finding women that also played a role, even if that includes one video clip with some questions, a short little reading blurb about somebody, but there's always a woman that was also involved within the history and the context of the topic that we're talking about. Does it take more time? Yes, but so many resources out there now, whether it is using chat or teachers pay teachers or just good old Google to give you information. For me personally, there's almost no excuse to at least include women within my curriculum. Secondly, of course, also including people of color. I am a person of color. I would love to know what a Puerto Rican or Dominican did in New York City around the time that so-and-so was happening. And so I think that from teachers, there has to be an interest to want to include other groups of people, and there has to be a curiosity to also want to include other groups of people. For me, it's not always finding out what a Hispanic did, but just somebody else, a different person of color. Or when we're learning about colonialism, what is the perspective of the natives at that time? There's just so many ways to be culturally inclusive, and it doesn't have to be a big old school-wide event in order to do that. I think cultural inclusivity could also be in the way that you ask do-now questions, asking certain questions that allow students to share about themselves personally. There's so many different ways that we can ask students questions that are not too personal, but really allow them and give them a space to talk about themselves, whether it's holidays that they celebrate that are connected to their religion, whether it is what types of foods that they enjoy eating. There's so many ways to make things inclusive. I have a health teacher in our school. They were talking about foods and how your plate itself should be set up, how many carbs, protein, etc. And she asked the students, based on the meals that you eat, based on the foods that you eat, what are some foods that fill in that category? And I remember one of the students thinking about her like chana masala. They are thinking about the content, healthy meals, making sure that they have a well-balanced meal, but including their culture, including their food and what they eat on a daily basis, and not having to adopt what is considered a typical healthy meal with a bunch of foods that culturally are not relevant to them and that their parents don't cook at all. So these are ways to be culturally relevant without it being overwhelming. Hopefully, based on what I've already said, would I recommend this teaching strategy? Absolutely. I think it allows you to build relationships with your students. They see that you are interested in who they are exactly as a person, and I just love it. Last one that is becoming extremely popular is project-based learning. I just recently learned that there are some states that don't even have like exit exams, but they do project-based learning as a way for students to graduate or go to the next grade. I had no idea that that existed because here in New York State, we currently have the Regents exams, and students need to pass those state exams in order to graduate from high school. And so this is a whole new world for me as far as project-based learning in your classroom, but then also schools and states requiring project-based learning. Two different worlds. I'm speaking about this from the lens of the classroom. Project-based learning for me and what I have seen is long extended group research assignment, allowing students to work collaboratively with each other or even individually for a greater purpose and a greater understanding of content. What I love about project-based learning is that it really does create an environment for real world connections, students having to work together, having to research information, knowing what is considered plagiarism versus what is just taking a straight fact from the internet. And of course, project-based learning can include a lot of student voice and student choice. And so I think that this strategy can be very, very helpful. I have decided to take the approach of project-based learning, and so far it is going super well. So right now we just finished Judaism. What I did was I split up 5 different groups, and each group has to research a different topic. They're giving information about the sacred text, important people, holidays, pilgrimage site, and main beliefs. That way each group can organize and decide amongst themselves. Are you doing a Canva? Are you doing Google Slides? Who's researching what? How are you going to present it? Make sure that you're not overwhelming the class with so much information, because students will have to take notes. Actually, I put a short up recently, if you go to my shorts, about me in the moment giving further instructions as students were working. This is the actual assignment that I am addressing in that short. So for me, I think that this is a great way for students to learn about different people, different places. So it's a really good way to build understanding, connection. Are there other ways to do project-based learning? I am sure, but this is just something that I have off the top of my head because we're currently in it and doing it. Here are some things I would say though. Does this strategy work? Yes. However, it needs a good balance of structure and also student autonomy. Once they're in their groups, they can decide how they want to disperse the information. Now here's the structure that I have provided. I created a checklist for them. They need to tell me what every single student is doing in their group. Who's answering what question, who's organizing the sources, etc. Once they figure all of that out, then I think that they're going to be way more successful. You cannot just throw students in a group, especially middle schoolers, 6th grade, throw them in a group and be like, let's see what happens, because there's always going to be a work imbalance. Someone will end up doing more than everybody else. And so by giving them that list and saying, hey, for all 4 of you or 5 of you, tell me what you're doing. That's what we figure out day 1. Who is doing what? That way students know their job, and you as the educator know how to reinforce group roles and responsibilities if there's any tension that rises up. But I definitely like this strategy. So with all of that being said, would I recommend project-based learning? Absolutely. But most importantly, I also want to hear from you guys. What strategies have worked for you in your classroom? What has failed you? What would you not recommend and think is also overhyped? I'm interested to know if anything I mentioned in the video you also have experience with, so please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and remember, strategies don't manage classrooms, teachers do. Systems help, but it is our relationships, it's the clarity, and of course it is the consistency that makes the biggest difference in the classroom. Please make sure again that you like this video, that you subscribe, and that you hype it up if you enjoy. Also turn on the notification bell so that you can be notified when I post another teaching video. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.